I'm 81 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that I couldn't have said out loud 2 years ago without breaking down. In 2023, I buried 3 people. My wife, Doris, 46 years of marriage. My older brother, Gene, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, how to throw a punch, and how to act right when nobody was watching. And my best friend since the army, Carl Whitfield, who I'd talked to on the phone every Thursday night for 38 years straight. Doris in March, and Jean in July, Carl in November. 3 funerals, 3 times standing in a suit I didn't want to wear, in a room I didn't want to be in, shaking hands I didn't want to shake. And somewhere around October, between Jean and Carl, I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping, I stopped going outside. I sat in my house in Decatur, Georgia, in Doris's chair, because it still smelled like her perfume, and I thought very seriously about whether there was any point in continuing to be alive. I'm still here. And this video is about why, not in some inspirational poster kind of way, in a practical, medical, this is what actually happened kind of way. Because grief doesn't just break your heart emotionally, it breaks your heart literally, and nobody warned me about that. I need to tell you something that most people don't know, and I wish to God someone had told me before I went through all this. Grief can kill you. I don't mean metaphorically, I mean your body starts shutting down. And about 6 weeks after Doris passed, I went to my doctor, Dr. Anand, been seeing him for 12 years, because I was having chest pains, not sharp, more like this heavy pressure, like somebody had parked a car on my rib cage. I thought I was having a heart attack. Honestly, part of me didn't care if I was. He ran an EKG, did blood work, checked my vitals. My blood pressure was 162/98. It had been 134/82 at my checkup 4 months earlier. My resting heart rate was 94. I'd lost 11 pounds in 6 weeks without trying. My cortisol levels, that's your stress hormone, were through the roof, and my CRP, which measures inflammation in your body, was elevated in a way that concerned him. Dr. Anand sat me down, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Walter, you're not just grieving. Your body is in a state of chronic emergency. Your immune system is suppressed. Your cardiovascular system is under enormous strain. If we don't address this, or the grief itself could cause a cardiac event. There's actually a name for it: Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. It's a real medical condition where intense emotional stress causes part of the heart to temporarily enlarge and not pump properly. It mimics a heart attack, and it can be fatal, especially in men over 70. I didn't have Takotsubo, thank God, but I was headed somewhere bad. My body was treating the loss of Doris like a physical attack. Like I'd been hit by something, and biologically, I had been. Here's what I've learned since then. In the first 6 months after losing a spouse, your risk of dying yourself goes up by about 40 to 60%. They call it the widowhood effect. It's not just sadness. Your cortisol stays elevated, which raises blood sugar and blood pressure. Your sleep architecture falls apart, so your body can't repair itself. You stop eating properly, so you lose muscle mass, and your immune system weakens. And if you isolate, which almost everyone does. Your inflammation markers go up even further because human beings are not designed to be alone. I was doing every single one of those things, every single one. This is hard to talk about, but I think it matters, so I'm going to say it. About 3 weeks after Jean died, so this was August of 2023, I was sitting in the kitchen at about 2 in the morning. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in months. I'd lost about 20 pounds total by then. I was eating maybe one meal a day, if you can call a can of soup and some crackers a meal. I was drinking bourbon every night, which I'd never done before. Doris didn't like having hard liquor in the house, so I'd never really developed the habit. But she was gone, and the bourbon made the silence bearable. That night, I stood up from the kitchen table and I blacked out, just collapsed, hit my head on the counter on the way down, and woke up on the kitchen floor with blood on my forehead and no idea how long I'd been there. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been an hour. I lay there on that floor, cold linoleum, could feel the grout lines on my cheek, and I thought about who would find me. My daughter Rachel lives in Charlotte. She calls every few days. It might have been 2, 3 days before anyone knew. I'd just be lying there on the kitchen floor. That's how it would end, not even in bed. On the kitchen floor next to a bottle of Maker's Mark, that image of Rachel driving 3 hours to find her father dead on the kitchen floor, that's what got me up, not for me, for her, and for my 2 grandkids who still needed a grandfather, even a broken one. I called Rachel the next morning and told her what happened. She was on a plane by noon, and she's the one who said something that changed everything. She said, "Dad, you have to treat this like a medical emergency, because that's what it is. You're not just sad, you're dying." She was right. Rachel stayed with me for 2 weeks. God bless that woman. She took time off work, left her husband with the kids, and moved into Jean's old room, which used to be the guest room, and she basically ran my life for 14 days. I let her because I didn't have the energy to argue. The first thing she tackled was sleep, because I wasn't sleeping. Not really. I'd lie in bed, in our bed, on Doris's side still made up the way she left it, and I'd stare at the ceiling until maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. Then I'd doze off for an hour, wake up, doze off again, wake up at 4:30 and give up. That's not sleep, that's torture. Here's what we did, step by step, and I'm telling you the details because maybe someone watching this needs to hear them. First, Rachel moved me out of the master bedroom. That was hard, really hard. She said, "Dad, you can't heal in the room where you keep expecting Mom to walk out of the bathroom." She was right, but it felt like another loss, like I was leaving Doris behind again. But I moved into the guest room, and the first night I slept 4 hours straight. 4 hours had become a miracle by then. Second, we set a hard bedtime, 10 o'clock, no negotiation, and a hard wake-up time, 7 in the morning. Even if I'd only slept 4 hours, I got up at 7. Or the sleep doctor Rachel found. She set up a telehealth appointment. Young woman, very smart. She explained that your body needs a consistent schedule to rebuild its circadian rhythm. Grief destroys your circadian rhythm. Your cortisol spikes at night instead of the morning, which is backwards. It takes discipline to reset it. Third, no bourbon after 6 p.m. This was the hardest one, because the bourbon wasn't about enjoying a drink. It was about numbing the pain long enough to close my eyes. But the sleep doctor explained something I didn't know. Alcohol fragments your sleep. You might pass out, but you're not getting the deep sleep your body needs to repair itself. She said, you're trading unconsciousness for actual rest, and they're not the same thing. I won't pretend I quit drinking overnight. I didn't, but I moved it to earlier in the day. One small glass of bourbon with lunch if I wanted it, and I stopped drinking after 6. The first few nights without it were rough. I was jittery, anxious, but by the end of the first week, I was sleeping 5 hours. By the end of the month, 6. 6 hours of real sleep after months of nothing felt like a resurrection. Fourth, and this one surprised me, Rachel bought me a weighted blanket, 20 pounds. I thought it was ridiculous. I'm an 80-year-old man, not a child who needs a security blanket. But she said there was research showing it helps with anxiety and grief-related insomnia, in something about deep pressure stimulation, calming the nervous system. I tried it to make her happy, and damn if it didn't work. There's something about that weight on your chest that feels like, I don't know, like being held when nobody's there to hold you anymore. My blood pressure after 6 weeks of proper sleep, 141/84, down from 162/98. Still not great, but I was moving in the right direction. My resting heart rate came down to 78, not where it should be, but better than 94. Here's something nobody tells you about grief. Food becomes disgusting, not just unappetizing, physically revolting. Your body doesn't want it. Every meal feels like a chore, like doing paperwork. You put the fork in your mouth and you chew, and it's like eating cardboard. And the cruel twist is that this is exactly when your body needs nutrition the most. When you're under chronic stress, your body burns through nutrients faster. Your muscles start breaking down. Your immune system, which is already weakened from the cortisol, gets even worse because you're not giving it the raw materials to function. When Rachel was here, she didn't try to make me eat big meals. She's smarter than that. She knew I couldn't handle a plate of food, so she did something I now recommend to anyone going through grief. She made me drink my nutrition. She bought a blender, nothing fancy, $30 blender from Target, and every morning she'd make me a smoothie. Frozen berries, a banana, a big handful of spinach, some Greek yogurt, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and a little bit of honey. It was about 12 ounces. Easy to get down, didn't require me to sit at a table and pretend to enjoy a meal. That smoothie became my anchor. Even after Rachel left, I made it every morning, every single morning. Some days it was the only substantial thing I consumed, but it was packed with antioxidants, protein, fiber, omega-3s from the flaxseed, and probiotics from the yogurt. Dr. Anand later told me that single smoothie was probably the thing that kept my body from deteriorating further during the worst months. Then, gradually, I added real meals back, but I had to trick myself. Here's how. I cooked for 2. I know that sounds crazy, but I'd make dinner. Simple stuff. Grilled chicken and vegetables, soup, a piece of fish with rice, and I'd set 2 places at the table, Doris's place and mine, and I'd eat at that table, and I'd talk to her. out loud, tell her about my day, ask her how the food was. Some people might think that's crazy. I don't care. It got me eating, and it kept me connected to her in a way that didn't involve staring at her empty chair and crying. The key foods that made a real difference, and this came from Dr. Anand and a nutritionist at the Grief Counseling Center. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel. The omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and which matters because grief jacks your inflammation up to dangerous levels. I started eating fish 3 times a week. I'd never been a fish person. Doris was the one who liked fish. But I learned to make salmon the way she used to, just olive oil, salt, pepper, lemon, 400 degrees for 12 minutes. Simple. Even I couldn't mess it up. Fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut. There's a connection between your gut bacteria and your mood that I didn't know about until the nutritionist explained it. Apparently, about 90% of your serotonin, the brain chemical that regulates mood, is made in your gut. When your gut bacteria are messed up from stress and bad eating, your mood gets even worse. I started having yogurt every day and adding sauerkraut to things. Did it cure my grief? No, nothing cures grief. But I stopped feeling like the floor was going to drop out from under me at random moments. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, collards, high in magnesium, which most older people are deficient in anyway, and which gets depleted even faster under stress. Magnesium helps with sleep, muscle function, heart rhythm. I was probably severely magnesium deficient by the time Rachel got to me. I started eating greens every day, plus Dr. Anand put me on a magnesium glycinate supplement, 400 milligrams at bedtime. Between that and the weighted blanket, my sleep improved even more. By the 6-month mark, so around September 2023, right before Carl died, I'd gained back about 8 of the 20 pounds I'd lost. My blood work was improving. My CRP had come down significantly. I wasn't healthy, but I'd stopped the free fall. Then Carl died, and I almost went right back to the bottom. When Carl died in November, I felt something I can only describe as rage, not at God, not at Carl, at the universe, at the sheer stupid cruelty of it. 3 people in 1 year. What kind of year takes 3 people from you? I came home from Carl's funeral, and I sat in that kitchen, and I didn't touch the blender for 4 days. I didn't go for the walk I'd started taking. I didn't take my blood pressure medication. I just sat there. I could feel myself sliding back into the hole I'd spent 6 months crawling out of. And some dark part of me whispered, just let go. It would be easier. What saved me, and I mean this literally, was the walking group. Let me back up. About 2 months after Doris passed, Dr. Anand had insisted I join a grief support group at the community center. I didn't want to go. I'm not a talk about my feelings kind of man. I grew up in a house where men didn't cry, didn't complain, didn't share. You pushed through. That was the rule. But I went because Dr. Anand said he'd worry about me if I didn't, and he'd been my doctor for 12 years, and I trusted him. The group was led by a counselor named Miriam, a woman about 60 who'd lost her own husband a decade earlier. There were 8 of us, 5 women, 3 men, all over 65, all wrecked by loss. What I didn't expect was that 2 of the men in the group, Howard, 77, and Louis, 73, would become the reason I kept going, not the counseling itself, although that helped, but the fact that after the 3rd meeting, Howard said, I can't sit in another circle and cry. Let's go walk. So we started walking every Tuesday and Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m., around the track at the community center, 1 mile, then two, then 2.5. Those walks kept me alive, literally, because when Carl died and I stopped everything, it was Howard who showed up at my door on Thursday morning. Didn't call first, just showed up. I knocked on my door at 7:30 a.m. and said, "Walter, we're walking. Get your shoes on." I told him I didn't feel like it. He said, "I know you don't. That's why I'm here. Get your shoes on." I put my shoes on, and we walked, and I cried for the first half-mile, which is something I never thought I'd do in front of another man. Howard didn't say anything. He just walked next to me, and when I was done crying, he said, "Same time Tuesday." That was it. Here's what the research says. And I looked this up later because I wanted to understand why those walks felt like medicine. Regular walking, even moderate, even slow, reduces cortisol levels by 20 to 30%. It releases endorphins, which are your body's natural painkillers. It improves blood flow to the brain, which helps with the cognitive fog that grief causes. And believe me, the fog is real. I'd forget words. I'd drive somewhere and forget why. I'd open the refrigerator and just stare. Oh, walking helped clear that fog, but the social part, walking with Howard and Lewis, that was the real medicine. Loneliness after loss triggers the same brain pathways as physical pain. It's not a metaphor. Your brain processes social isolation the same way it processes a broken bone. And for older men especially, who tend to rely on their wives as their primary social connection, losing a spouse can mean losing your entire social world overnight. Howard and Lewis became my social world. Not a replacement for Doris or Jean or Carl, never that, but a reason to get dressed in the morning, a reason to step outside, a reason to stay in the fight. I want to tell you about the small things because I think we focus too much on the big dramatic changes and not enough on the tiny daily habits that actually keep you going. I started making my bed every morning. That sounds stupid. Who cares if an 80-year-old widower's bed is made? But Doris always made the bed first thing at every day. And after she died, I stopped. The bed stayed unmade. The house got messy. Dishes in the sink for days. And the mess fed the depression. And the depression fed the mess. And it spiraled. Making the bed was my way of telling myself, today matters. Today is a real day. This isn't just waiting. This is living. I started going to church again. I'd stopped after Doris's funeral because I was angry at God, if I'm being honest. But I went back. Oh, not because I found some great spiritual peace. I went back because the people there knew me and Doris. They said her name. Everyone else had stopped saying her name, like it would remind me she was dead, as if I'd forgotten. But at church, Miss Henderson would say, "Doris used to love this hymn," and it felt like she was still in the room for a second. I needed that. I started taking my medications on time, every day. Blood pressure medication, statin, baby aspirin, magnesium, vitamin D, doctor. Anand tested me, and I was severely deficient, which is common in people who stop going outside. The vitamin D deficiency was probably making my depression worse, he said. I got on 4,000 IU a day, and within 2 months my levels normalized and my mood noticeably improved. I started calling people, not just waiting for them to call me. I called Rachel every morning. I called my nephew in Alabama every Sunday. I called an old coworker, Frank, who I'd lost touch with. I made it a point to have at least one real conversation with another human being every single day, not texting, talking, hearing a voice. Dr. Anand said social connection is as important for cardiovascular health as not smoking. He said there's research showing that social isolation increases your risk of death by 26%. 26%. That's higher than obesity. And I started writing, just a journal, nothing fancy, a spiral notebook from the dollar store. Every night before bed, I write 3 things: what I did that day, one thing I'm grateful for, and one thing I want to do tomorrow. That's it. 3 lines. Some nights the grateful line is hard. Some nights I write grateful that the hot water still works, or grateful that Howard showed up. But the act of writing it forces my brain to look for something good. And over time, I mean months, not days, that shifted something in me. The darkness didn't go away, but it got a little less dark. It's been about 2 years now. I'm 81. I weigh 174 pounds, which is about right for my frame. My blood pressure is 132/80. My cholesterol is managed. My CRP is back to normal. I walk 2 miles every Tuesday and Thursday with Howard and Louis, and I walk alone the other days, about 1.5 miles. I sleep 6 to 7 hours. I eat the smoothie every morning, fish 3 times a week, greens every day. Am I over it? No, you don't get over it. There are still mornings I wake up and 10 a.m. There are still mornings I wake up and reach for Doris's side of the bed. There are still Thursdays when I pick up the phone to call Carl before I remember. Jean's birthday was last month. I sat in the truck in the parking lot of the hardware store and cried for 15 minutes. But I'm alive. And then I'm not alive in the way I was in those first months, which was barely, resentfully, like living was something being done to me against my will. I'm alive on purpose now. I choose it every day. Some days I choose it eagerly. Some days I choose it through gritted teeth, but I choose it. Here's what I want you to know if you're going through something like this. Grief is a medical event. Treat it like one. Get your blood work done. Check your blood pressure. Talk to your doctor honestly about what you're eating and how you're sleeping. Don't try to tough it out. I almost died trying to tough it out. Sleep comes first. Before diet, before exercise, before anything else. If you're not sleeping, nothing else will work. Get help with it. Move bedrooms if you have to. Set a schedule. Cut the alcohol at night. Do whatever it takes. Eat even when you don't want to. Drink a smoothie if you can't face a meal. Give your body the raw materials to fight. All omega-3s, greens, fermented foods, protein. Your body is in a war. Feed the soldiers. Move your body. You don't have to run a marathon. Walk to the end of the driveway. Walk around the block. Walk with someone if you can. The combination of movement and human company is the most powerful antidepressant I've ever experienced, and I say that as someone who also takes an actual antidepressant, which I'm not ashamed of. And find your Howard. Or find someone who will show up at your door and make you put your shoes on. If you don't have a Howard, be a Howard. Go to the grief group, the church, the community center, the walking club. Go anywhere where people know what loss feels like. You cannot survive this alone. You are not designed to survive this alone. Doris would have wanted me to be here. She would have wanted me eating that salmon and walking those miles and sleeping in that weighted blanket. She would have hated the bourbon. She would have loved Howard and Louis. I'm still here, Doris. I'm taking care of it. I'm Walter, and I'll see you in the next one. If this one hits you close to home, you're not alone in that. Subscribe if you haven't, and if you've lost someone and you're still figuring out how to keep going, write it in the comments. Not for me. For the person who's going to scroll down there tonight feeling like they're the only one. Let them know they're not. Take care of yourselves.